Welcome to Full Circle. I'm Suzanne McAllister. I'm glad you could be with us today. We are going to be previewing a movie called The War Within. It's a powerful and impactful movie, so be sure and stay with us because we'll also meet the creative team of father and son. But first, Norman Rockwell is as American as apple pie, and he has been on many of the Saturday Evening Post magazine covers. Here to tell us about Norman Rockwell and the Saturday Evening Post, it's a pleasure to welcome Joan Servas. She is the CEO and publisher of the magazine, and also historian Jeff Nielsen. Good to have you both here.
Thank you.
Well, I think for many of us, we grew up with the Saturday Evening Post, but it goes way beyond the baby boomer years. Joan, let's start with you. Tell me about the 300-year history.
Well, if you take it back to Benjamin Franklin in 1728, when it first started the Pennsylvania Gazette, he was a writer and publisher of that. The magazine, he then went off to do the revolution and negotiate with France and England. So he left the country. It was eventually sold to a company, a family named Atkinson in 1821. And that's when it became the Saturday Evening Post. But it kind of carried the same philosophy that Benjamin Franklin had created.
So what would you say that philosophy has been? Because obviously it has stood the test of time.
Well, if you go back to Ben Franklin, if I could say one thing, it would be that communicating American to the spirit at the time. And it was information, it was the news, how to cook things, it was entertainment. He would love to write, he was very witty. So people enjoyed it and looked forward to it. It was more of a regional Pennsylvania Gazette. So at this point, that was the center of the hub, though, of the nation's growing revolution and interest in independence. So in a way, it was we need to raise up and take care of ourselves, and that was Ben Franklin. He started off an indentured servant who escaped.
I didn't realize that.
He left, well, it was for his brother.
So Jeff must love all this history. As a historian, when you think of the impact that the Saturday Evening Post has had, and in fact, you've even brought some of the originals. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when Mr. Franklin went off on his country service and he left the Pennsylvania Gazette in the hands of his employees, they eventually ran it as far as they could, and then it sort of fell into disuse. It was purchased by the Atkinsons in 1821, and I can show you an example.
Let's take a look at these.
This is one of the broadsheet publications of the Post as it appeared in Philadelphia. This is 1825.
Let's open another page so we can see two of those. Wow.
And here's our profuse advertising section right here with plenty of advertisements for candle snuffers and feathers, which obviously big movers in those days. But this was a continuation of the spirit of what he had promoted in the Pennsylvania Gazette, which was self-reliance in America, being able to identify yourself as an American, and this is the American lifestyle. We're self-reliant, we take care of ourselves, we're moral, we're hardworking, and those are the people that he wrote to. And this was the Saturday Evening Post in 1821, carrying on with that same tradition.
So we don't really think, I think, in present time that the newspapers and magazines 300 years from now will really be something that people 300 years from now will look back and say, wow, that's what life was all about. And as we look at some of the transition, tell me about this, Joan, because certainly that's not what the magazine looks like today.
Well, this, flash forward to 1899. Cyrus Curtis bought the Saturday Evening Post, and during the 1800s, it was a literary magazine and science, it did everything, but at the time that he bought it, it was not flourishing. But he really appreciated the Ben Franklin legacy there, so he made a transformation at that time into a magazine that would communicate, would be distributed all over the country. That was the #1 thing that he wanted to do, and sort of bring in what national interests were, using Saturday Evening Post boys, that were all over the country. That distribution method was an amazing idea that he had, because he used to be a paper boy.
So obviously things have changed, and as we think about that iconic Saturday Evening Post cover, we do think a lot about Norman Rockwell. And you have such a treasure trove of all of these fabulous magazines. We're going to go ahead and take a break, but when we come back, we are going to talk about the 4 freedoms. Stay with us. Welcome back to Full Circle. We are talking about the 300-year-old Saturday Evening Post with our guests from the Post. And certainly when I think of the Saturday Evening Post, I think of Norman Rockwell. In fact, the picture that we showed earlier was his very first cover. Why do you think his artwork was so popular and resonated with people so much, Joan?
Well, the covers of the Saturday Evening Post told a story. And from the very beginning, starting 1899, but Rockwell didn't appear until 1916. And his first cover of the little boy who's in his Sunday best outfit with a stroller with his little baby brother, and his friends are laughing at him, mocking him. And the faces and the expressions people could relate to. They really liked Norman Rockwell. He somehow touched your emotion, either through empathy or through your own personal experience or visual mindset in terms of what that would mean. So it was just a wonderful, warm, special effect.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly a good way to describe it, because it does sort of have that feeling that we can relate to. And if we can't relate to it personally, we certainly have known somebody who has gone through that. Tell us about his very famous 4 freedoms, if you would, Jeff.
Well, Rockwell wanted to do something for the war effort early on. And what he decided, he originally went to the government and said, let me do propaganda posters for you. And they say, oh, no, we're going to have skilled draftsmen. We don't want mere illustrators. So he went back to a studio and he took up the line from President Roosevelt's 1941 State of the Union address, talking about what was the purpose of the war, why were the Allies fighting. And he, in Roosevelt, mentioned 4 freedoms: the freedom of speech, the freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And he came up to Lorimer, the editor, and said, how about I do these illustrations, because people in Washington aren't that interested. And so they were published. They weren't on the cover, though. The unusual thing was that they were actually put inside the magazine along with essays from 4 different essayists, so that those appeared in 1943.
And we have those examples right here in terms of the illustrations inside the magazine. And there you have the one of speech, and then we have worship, and also freedom of fear, and then our last one, freedom of want. You really have a treasure trove of history. So in addition, though, to the artists, the Saturday Evening Post is known for its humor. Why do you think that has been so popular, Joan?
Well, people like to laugh and they like to be entertained. And we had cartoons like Hazel that people loved, and they look forward to it. And the same series would be consistently funny and resonate with what was going on in the day, and still today if you go through those. So it was entertainment.
And also good literature. Speak, if you will, Jeff, about some of the individuals who submitted their articles to the Post. Well,
the big names that appeared in the Post go all the way back to the 1820s when he published Edgar Allan Poe. Mark Twain appeared, Nathaniel Hawthorne. But in the modern era, the Post was the premier publishing site. We basically gave F. Scott Fitzgerald his big break. Sinclair Lewis, William Faulkner, John Steinbeck, all of them appeared in the Saturday Evening Post, and we became known for outstanding fiction.
Even Gertrude Stein.
Even Gertrude Stein.
But Hemingway got rejected.
Hemingway got rejected. Okay, so for all you writers out there, if you get rejected, don't let it stop you, because if Hemingway got stopped...
the editor thought he was too depressing.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. So you always learn some interesting tidbits. Well, we have spent time looking back. Certainly the publication world has changed. We have under a minute. I do want to take a look forward, because certainly what you're doing now is chronicling our time now. What is the biggest challenge and change that you're having to do? Because the Saturday Evening Post is still published.
We still publish the magazine. It's available for if someone's interested in a subscription. It's not hard to contact us. But we are moving forward with the same ideas and thoughts from the past, telling America's story. And we use illustration to do that, and everybody likes a story, if it's in art or if it's in fiction form, so we carry that on. We have a fiction contest every year. And I think the other thing that we're doing is we're digitizing everything that we had in our archives, and that's so important because this paper is getting older and older, so we will have everything up on our internet eventually, or available on the internet.
Well, certainly with Jeff Nilsson being the historian and archivist, you have your work cut out for you. Thank you for coming on the program today. And thank you also to Joan Servas, the publisher and CEO of the Saturday Evening Post Society. Well, Joan said everybody loves the story. We're going to tell you about the story of the War Within after this. We are back, and in this segment of our program, we're going to be reviewing the movie The War Within. You'll definitely want to get a pencil and paper ready because this is a powerful film. Well, the father and son team that co-wrote it, produced it, and directed it are here today. It's a pleasure to have Brett and Gary Varvel here. Congratulations on a very well done movie.
Thank you very much.
I'm really excited for you. Okay, now, Gary, we know that you are the editorial cartoonist at the Indianapolis Star. So before we talk about The War Within, I know that you have had some Norman Rockwell-inspired editorial cartoons. Tell us about The Fear of Want.
Well, every editorial cartoonist has drawn about a Rockwell-themed cartoon, and The Fear from Want is obviously one of the key ones, I think, especially around Thanksgiving. I think if you were to Google that, you're going to find a lot of cartoonists, editorial cartoonists, have drawn that image and done different things with it. And I've done a couple of things with it. One, you know, that Christmas starts earlier and earlier every year, and so the guests are leaving earlier and earlier to go Christmas shopping. But also the economy being what it was, then I did one where the turkey was really small, labeled as the economy, and so yeah, it's just. Norman Rockwell is an icon for America, and so it's not just that one. I've done a lot of different ones, but that's the key one that we'll work on.
And his illustrations tell a story, and your movie, The War Within, tells a powerful story. How would you describe this, Brett?
Well, The War Within examines the part that no one sees in our lives, and that is our soul, the internal part that only God can see. All of us have a battle that rages within every one of us every single day. We have this internal dialogue. We have emotions that scream out. We have these struggles of what to do, what not to do. And my dad and I were just burdened with the fact that no one has ever exposed this in a film form. And we wanted to go after it. In James chapter 4, verse 1, it says that, why are there fightings and quarrels among you? Isn't it because your passions are at war within you? And we felt very strongly that we wanted to expose the battle that's going on inside of everybody.
So what we did was we personified the soul as 6 members: your mind, emotion, will, conscience, memory, and heart. So here Michael Sinclair is a young cartoonist, and he's a Christian, and his world falls apart. We go inside of him and we see these 6 parts of him interacting, and it gets ugly.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how in the movie you use special effects, you use back and forth in terms of reality in the mind, also flashbacks of telling the story about a couple that had a tragedy that happened in their own life. So why should people see this movie? Why do you think it will move them and perhaps make them aware of some things that they're struggling with?
Well, I think one of the things that we try to do with the film is we try to be honest. And a lot of movies can kind of sugarcoat, a lot of Christian films can sugarcoat the realities of life. We were struck with the idea of what if we drug this main character through the mud, took him through a deep trial in his life? How is he going to react to that? we all can relate to that. These are real struggles that we deal with in the film. Everyone has, especially in this economy, deals with loss of job. We've lost family members. We have struggles in our marriage. That's one of the key points in the film. So what's going on inside of our soul when that's all happening? We wanted to really just challenge people to be honest with themselves and see what they really need, and what they really need to win this war is Christ.
See, we were also impressed by the Old Testament. It's very real with people's problems. And if you read the Psalms, David was pretty honest with the Lord when he just didn't understand something. This is not fair. So what we wanted to do is really bring that reality to life. That every one of us goes through that kind of stuff. So the question is, how are we going to handle it? Are we going to try to reason our way through it? Or are we going to rely on God and understand that He's sovereign, He's allowed this to happen for a reason?
And I just keep going back to how powerful this movie is, because you do mix in that fantasy, but yet you make people think. And we have to mention that Brett plays the key role of the young man who's struggling, who's lost his job, who's dealing with issues with his wife. And you are Will. So not only did the two of you write this, but you also acted in it as well. What were some of your special challenges, let alone getting the financing together? And congratulations on finishing the project.
Thank you.
But give us some insight into Brett, the filmmaker.
I didn't want to act in the film to begin with. I was very adamant that I wanted to find a way out of that task. I love directing. I'm very comfortable behind the camera, but in God's divine plan, He made a way that I was going to play both Michael and Hart in the film. And so really, I think the thing that made it slightly more manageable for me was the fact that my dad and I knew the film so well. We knew it backwards and forwards, and so I was very comfortable when I would step on set that I knew when I would need to put my director hat on and when I needed to be in the actor's seat. And the thing that was a challenge for me more than anything was just to keep everything in line.
Sure, and real, as
yeah.
Gary was saying. Now, let's talk, before we run out of time, the book, The Good Shepherd,
yeah.
written by Gary Varvel.
Mm-hmm.
If you've watched the movie, you can see that. How does that book play into the movie?
Well, it actually becomes a vehicle that really plays a part in Michael Sinclair's wife, played by the part of Rebecca Reed. And she is a person who thinks she's a Christian, but there's really no evidence in her life. She has really no interest. It's just something she kind of grew up with when she was young. And so that becomes kind of a rift in the relationship. But the book, and I don't want to give it away, but it has a way of playing to her emotion and causing her to remember and bringing her back to reality. So it's something that we had talked about, and then I sat down and wrote it. Actually, it almost wrote itself, and then illustrated it, and we were pretty excited the way it turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to read one line from the movie. Everybody, and I'm not going to give it away, but everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. Why is that so important in this movie, Brett?
Well, that's spoken by the character Ray in the film, and Ray is kind of that older, wiser person that comes around Michael and tries to guide him through some of these trials. Ray has an eternal perspective on life. He talks about how the fact that this world, this is not our home. We all have an eternal destiny. Either we're going to be going to heaven or we're going to be going to hell, depending on where we stand with Christ. And so really the whole point of the movie is kind of personified in the character of Ray and showing us that this life will come to an end. We're all going to die. The question is, what do you do with Jesus Christ? Where's your true destiny going to lie? And one of the questions that struck me and my dad when we were writing was, if your world were to fall apart, would you honestly be able to say that God is all I need?
Well, on that note, we are going to put a website up on the screen, so if you would like more information about The War Within, how you can get it into your church, your family, and onto your TV screen so you can watch it right at home. Brett and Gary Varvel, thank you so much. They are the creative team behind The War Within. Well, don't go away. We will conclude our program with music. Stay with us.
Stay tuned. Musical Showcase is coming up next. And now, here's our musical showcase.
Well, I'm so glad that you could watch our program today, and I hope our conversation has made you think about your own life. Well, I'm Suzanne McAllister, and I will see you next time, Full Circle. And to close out our show, here's Stephanie Turner with Because You Love Me.
What an amazing grace, so kind, so sweet. You gave your life for me because you love me. I'm free from sin because you love me. I have peace within because you love me. All fear is gone because you love me. Because you love me. By your stripes I am healed. Because you love me. By your Holy Spirit I'm sealed. Because you love me. All shame is gone because you love me. Because you love me, I'm free from sin. Because you love me, I have peace within. Because you love me, all shame